You are listening to WXRWLP Milwaukee on 104.1 FM and on riverwestradio.com everywhere. Now you can also listen by telling your smart speaker to play Riverwest Radio. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee, dedicated to keeping Milwaukee's bike riding community rolling with bike pumps available for use in all Collectivo cafes. More info is available in cafes and at collectivocoffee.com. Listeners, thanks for listening in. If you're listening live, I want to thank Suki and her show, Suki's Diner, for some very kind words, and I really, really appreciate them because that's what makes the world go round. I also want to thank Zav LaPlay for being master and commander of this ship, the captain at the helm. So thank you very much. And also Tom Pankowski for kicking in a very necessary sugar cookie, and it just helped make the world brighter, all three people just now, and four as well. So, good stuff, man. As I hope they are not Zav, but Gabe calls in. Zav's right here if you're listening live, that is. And if you are listening live, it's a beautiful evening in Milwaukee. It's sunny out. It was a warm day. It's evening. The evening tide is starting to roll in, so it's getting a little bit cooler. But there are people skateboarding on occasion down the city street here on Center. And, yeah, marginal day, but, very fortunate and very blessed to be here for sure. Very blessed to be having Gabe call in. Thanks, Gabe. We'll get to you, my man. Thank you so much for calling in. Definitely. It was a full weekend. Let's see. Film-wise, a great screening on Saturday night, Anti-Porno, Japanese film, and it was killer. Visually sumptuous, rife with metaphor. I mean, you can dig deep to a certain extent. An adult film. Don't bring the kids. 76-minute running time. And so it really, 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 really hit the spot. And if you're into film, if you're into color, if you're into composition, definitely check out Anti-Porno. And yeah, what a treat. And it's always great to operate with a sense of discretion, and it pays off. Because your time is the most precious commodity that you have, and to spend it wisely is a very good thing. And when you operate with a sense of discretion, you're using that time in a wise manner, and to go ahead and just arbitrarily see this and that is definitely not part of the program. So again, just an incredibly rewarding experience, Anti-Porno. And if you're a filmmaker, it's a film to see, most certainly. And speaking of that, this weekend was the Milwaukee Underground Film Festival, and it was also quite a treat. We saw the opening night over at UWM. It was free and open to the public throughout the weekend, and it is short films on the advanced guard. And when I was watching those on Thursday, I thought, this is kind of like the apex of experimental filmmaking, because there are professional experimental filmmakers that it's either self-financed or grants and so on and so forth, or they teach they're professors or associate professors or teachers and that, and that's what they do in life, is make experimental films. But there's probably no zenith of them, in the sense that when you have your youth and your vigor and you are at the high point of your enthusiasms, that's probably when your greatest work, so to speak, is achieved. So when I was watching that, it's not like 30 years from now they'll be making their greatest film. It's like, no, this is probably it right here and now. And so that was a heck of a realization. So saw enough films on the advanced guard, the avant-garde, until Saturday when they had a screening of 16 millimeter films Caddy Corner here from River West Radio, and again, what a great time to have see films at 3:00 in the not 3:00 in the morning, 3:00 in the afternoon, and on 16 millimeter. The first one was double projected, two 16 millimeter projectors, and then on to regular programming. 16 millimeter is beautiful. It's not a sentimental comparison I'm making to digital. It's just digital has nothing on film. It's not sentiment. It's through a practical lens. I say this, that this film really has that obviously chemical saturation that digital just cannot achieve, whether it's 4K or whatever. It just does not look like 16 millimeter. I prefer 16 way over 35. And when they have films at the theater that's shot on Super 16 and this is nothing to do with China Test Girls, so Frankie, don't have your heart skip a beat here. But, when they say, hey, the film was shot on 16 and all of that stuff, and by the time it gets digitally processed into the theater, it doesn't even matter. You couldn't tell if it was 16 millimeter if your life depended on it. But when it's shot on 16, projected on 16, it really does hit the spot. So that was a treat. So thank you, Milwaukee Underground Film Festival. And then they were having the after parties with great free food. So I want to thank Milwaukee Underground Film Festival for an outstanding job and thank you for providing cultural enrichment this weekend. So I've been reading recently Universal Harvester by John Darnielle. He's one of the guys in the group Mountain Goats, which is abstract to me because I've yet to hear them. But I am reading, I know him as an author by reading his book, and Universal Harvester is a good book. I know I'm talking like a caveman right now, but so be it. There's reasons why we pick up books, and there's reasons why, and it's not just the content, but it's the context. Like something's affecting you in your life, you're reacting to something, you're in this particular psychological milieu, and that's what draws you to the book. Such as also this morning, I was reading Marina Abramovic's memoir, Right on the Money. I can relate to a lot, and it's just something very necessary to read. And on another note, too, I've begun Patti Smith's M Train. I had finished her Just Kids, gave a gestation period for her, and now I'm actually reading her book Devotion as well, but as in memoir, I'm on M Train. So, and yeah, Patti Smith is one of our great writers, no doubt. And The Artist is Present, that documentary on Marina Abramovic doing her performance piece is a very beautiful, moving film. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. If you are so inclined. I'm not twisting your arm to do anything. So anyway, Gabe, we have not forgotten about you. We will get to you. Another tripped out thing was on Friday I realized, we were obviously, you have to write every day and work on projects, so on and so forth. And I realized, man, I want to do some social integration here. It was gallery night. And I said, wow. And I just out of the blue, I thought, is it this weekend? And I checked, and it was, because things can get routine and you're just going through the motions. You're becoming a parody. So I stopped going for a while. So anyway, we hit the streets into beautiful downtown Milwaukee, went into South Downtown, into the 3rd Ward, and I wanted to, one of the main streets, some of the main streets in the 3rd Ward are Broadway and Water Street, and I just wanted to be among the beautiful people out on the sidewalks and so forth, but, where we parked was right by MIAD, the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. I said, I don't know if I should go in here because we should go in here because we just want to, like I said, stay out on the streets. But we dipped in and we almost never came back out. Man, that place was so happening. It was 4 floors of beautiful art, from graphic novel displays to installations, and by the time we got to that fourth floor, it was just packed with people, a huge space with so many installations, and it was like being actually in heaven. It was bright, even light, all the beautiful people, all the interesting people. So I was like, man, this is killer. This is where I need to be on a Friday night. And then actually I think it was after that, if I'm correct, then we booked over to the after party for the Underground Film Fest. And that night it was hors d'oeuvres and pizza and all of that stuff. And we got there early. We got the killer table, got the killer parking. So it all worked out. And dude's skateboards passed, and he literally was living the life at that moment. So yeah, and then it went on and on throughout the weekend, trying to get as much writing and project stuff done as one could. Saturday we returned to Maya to take photos, and really, because there was no one there at that point. None of the artists were present, none of the patrons really. It was just the slow drift of people, casually wandering in. So there was real good space and very easy energy to really take some photos of some of the architectural designs, and it was just killer. Some of the modernist resort interiors and so forth. So I just was alone at that point, spent the time just luxuriating in what I was doing, and that really made for a solid weekend, all 3 days or whatever. And then actually, Gabe, I'm just about to get to you. On the way home one of the nights, sometimes we just pop into an establishment or two just to say hi, and people are, hanging out on the streets. And so I walked up to a group of people, and one of the dudes, who I didn't even know was an actor or anything like that, said, "Hey, I just auditioned for your play." And I said, "Wow, is that cool, man?" I said, "Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for doing that." So that was certainly a total surprise. And then actually, hold on, Gabe, when we were done writing, I actually saw one of my actor friends from way on the other side of town, who I don't see very often, but my eyes were so tired and my psychology was so depleted that I just couldn't get into the emotional ballyhoo of, "Hey, how you doing? What are you working on?" And trying to explain that for the 4,000th time. I just didn't have it in me, and I just went home briefly before coming to this station. Gabe, how are you doing, my man?
Mark, excellent.
Thank you, Gabe.
Excellent. Just excellent. Yeah, avoid mediocrity and avoid anything unnecessary at all costs. So good work on that, Mark. Yeah.
Nice. Are you eating a carrot?
No.
Okay, I'm messing with you, man. But
there's a whole slew of really good stuff coming up later this year. There are a handful of these mainstream films that you hear about that I could really care less about anticipating, because you never know whether something that has anything to do with anything corporate or Hollywood or big budget or full of boardroom executives, sometimes by total happenstance, that stuff is, the elements come together and you accidentally, or, sometimes if they get out of the way enough, a filmmaker is actually allowed to make a film instead of just a product. And with the increasing frequency and numbers and multitudes of films being these corporate entities, but where they've actually realized that that quality, especially with series or films that are reliant on each other for the fluidity of these films being interwebbed, quality will help in terms of ensuring that people and their friends and their fans and even the casual viewer who hasn't watched all the films in said series might attend. So in that regard, making these films unique or making these films individual or having some distinction between them has now become something that's profitable instead of just they'll show up no matter what. That is no longer the moniker. But in terms of, there's still so many films that are churned out by studios, big and small, where whether they be remakes and rehashes of old ideas or even original screenplays, I use the word original very questionably, where the quality is just not... Studios are taking less chances on small, original, independent-feeling screenplays than ever. Stories and films about the average person doing sort of average things in an average way, but told artfully and exquisitely and with depth and feeling and poignance. You saw studios doing these types of films more into the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. And by the 80s, they were just mainstream films. Because by that point, that method had been sort of novel in the 60s. And by the 70s, as the filmmaking techniques were allowed to become increasingly more abstract and more experimental, by the 80s, that technique was already 2 generations in. So that was just considered standard American intelligent filmmaking. So we've gotten so far away from that, where when a film is about, and Mark, you were talking about this, that when a film is about an adult or a group of adults, and they just act like adults, and they just engage in adult behavior, whether that means sexual or just discussing things as normal, mature adults, it feels so refreshing. And I have to remind myself that this wasn't always the status quo and the norm of cinema, where something being mature meant that it felt intelligent. But that's just the state of where a lot of mainstream cinema is. There's still loads of independent, foreign, underground cinema that's being made in that manner. But a lot of it just isn't getting that massive, those big press releases, whether on a smaller scale or on a large scale. So playing the game of getting a film released and getting a film distributed and getting a film talked about, because there are so many means of discussing, so many outlets of media, so many objects and ideas that your film has to stick out and stand out. We are no longer living in the age of Entertainment Tonight or Extra, or where where the majority of the film-going public watches either basic cable or just basic television, and their entertainment magazine shows or their entertainment magazines or newspapers or the radio is their means of learning and hearing about films for the most part. The internet has definitely changed the accessibility of what people want to talk about, what people want to learn about, and who's in control of that information. As much as those forces can be manipulated, the ability to stay on a subject as long as you want or stay on a subject as little as you want has changed the rules of advertising and of what people want to go see and what gets seen. So there are these smaller films that I feel like 20 years ago they would have been novel. They would have been made with a bigger budget. They would have been given a chance. They would have been given an opportunity behind a big studio to really flourish or really thrive or really have their full, be able to really cocoon and spread out. A movie like Fight Club, if it were made today, I think would be made by a smaller studio, like Lionsgate, if not even smaller. It would be given a micro budget. I don't think you would see most of the innovative techniques involving special effects that the film has, which is actually instrumental to telling the story of that film. It's one of those films where the special effects actually are special. It's not just vanity. It's not pointless window dressing. The special effects in that film achieve an effect. But today I feel a movie like Fight Club, which is really a film about ideas, where the visuals are meant to enhance those ideas. I feel like a movie like that would be given a very minimal budget. The violence would be toned up. The sarcasm and the wit and the irony and the intelligence of that film would be toned down. You probably wouldn't have like top name Hollywood stars in it like you did. And definitely you wouldn't have the top-notch special effects of the time that film had. So when I see a movie like Mom and Dad, which has a novel concept, has a novel presentation, has some very good, earnest, almost accomplished filmmaking behind it, I can't help but think, man, if this would have been made in like the early 2000s or the late 90s, this movie would have been like great. It's one of those films where I feel like, man, you know what could have helped this film is some money or some time, some effort, some of that Hollywood juice. So Mom and Dad is an independent film that just came out a few weeks ago, and it stars Selma Blair and Nicolas Cage as a pair of slowly aging parents who were punk rocker, metalhead, sort of like just they were free spirits in the 1980s and have grown into their corporate. She's become a stay-at-home homemaker mom. He's an accountant. His job title is never really clear, but it all the more from his perspective, he never specifies what his job is. It just looks boring and corporate and soulless. And a nationwide pandemic happens where all of a sudden intelligent species of the animal kingdom, the nature-nurture system reverses, and they start where parents want to kill their young, just their own children. It's not some sort of all-out feeding frenzy. It's not like zombies. It's not like some sort of rage pandemic like a lot of other pandemic thrillers. It's a film that's specifically targeted on parents killing their children. And the film feels very kitschy. It feels very budgeted, and it feels very limited until the second act of the film opens up and you see some of the best acting that Nicolas Cage has ever done. And there are some truly amazing moments in it that are allowed to blossom because of the artistry of, you see the actor that Nicolas Cage was at one point, and not the joke that he's become, this direct-to-video action film stooge of himself. And there really is this manic, wild, unpredictable energy that once made him such a unique, if kind of typecast performer in the mid to late 90s. And it's really refreshing. It's really beautiful. It's cool to see Nicolas Cage, the actor, do this, and it's also cool to get lost in the film for a few minutes. But then the film comes back to its gimmick, and it comes back to its limitations, and you remember, oh yeah, that's right, this is just a really small budgeted film that wasn't given a shot. And it's really effective through a certain lens and through a certain prism. But as it was over, and as I thought about its good qualities and I thought about its limitations, I was imagining if I would have watched this film with you, Mark, I couldn't help but think that you and I would have a few nice things to say about its intelligent qualities, but ultimately, I always appreciate when you will state some nice things about a film, but then say, but ultimately it's a marginal film.
Yeah.
I can always appreciate that because that is the fact of so much cinema that comes out nowadays, that even films with good ideas and good execution, for the most part, fall into these subcategories of worthlessness.
You know what? It's a trip that I saw these films, because again, like I say, I see things or search things out for contextual reasons, and this I saw a couple films by this filmmaker Aaron Katz, and I know we talked about it on the show. They're just kind of like youngsters hanging out at the turn of the century, these low budget films. And I think he's got a new one out, so I'd be interested in seeing that. Also, the director, the Argentinian director of The Headless Woman, has Zama out, which was just at the Latin Film Festival at the university, and unfortunately, I didn't catch Zama. I would have loved to check that out, man. But Salesman is coming up as well this week. The Maisleys brothers, and that's a heck of a film. And to be able to see that on the big screen is certainly going to be a treat.
Absolutely. The Maisleys brothers are just among the greatest documentary filmmakers, period. We've discussed several of their films as single spotlight films on the show, and their work as a whole. About 3 years ago, we did. We looked at cinema verite, and we looked at different movements within documentary filmmaking. Films that work as sort of these fly-on-the-wall documents of a people and of a culture, of a place, a setting, where the filmmaking is meant to disappear. The art of filmmaking is meant to sort of disappear into the wall and sort of evaporate, where it's more clinical, it's more looking at the subject, where that is the artistry of the film, is looking at the subject. And the art of that filmmaking, as much as someone like Frederick Wiseman would say, I am not an artist, I am a detective, I am a clinical photographer. I don't buy that approach, because his films are so artfully, perfectly captured. And I don't use the word perfect cheaply.
Right.
I don't throw that around like I think that's a game. I watch his films with respect, admiration, because he chooses his subjects and he weeds through so much footage to find the essence of the story, of the moments that he's looking for. And that type of filmmaking requires a discipline and a discernment and a type of honesty that very few filmmakers, and very few documentary filmmakers and very few filmmakers and artists are really capable of. And his films have this, because there still is a bias no matter what. So I really respect Wiseman's intentions as much as I feel that they may be false. But the Maisleys don't have such pretensions. They clearly film their subjects with a gaze in mind. And once they weed through their footage, they look for a certain storyline. I'd read an interview with the surviving of the two Maisleys after the first of which died. And he said, when remarking on his work, he said, if I would have said this when my brother was alive, he would have killed me. But in making a lot of these films, there were so many avenues we could have gone down. And the reason that we chose these particular avenues, which were often extremely unfair to our subjects, is because they made more entertaining films. But they were usually extremely unfair, because all the stuff, most of the footage that we left out would have completely recanted or undone the specificity of what we were showing and saying, the narrative of what we were telling, because there were more angles to what we had captured. But that would have made a less precise and a less memorable film. So he's saying that through subtraction, which is of course the great art of editing, and of editing, whether it's your writing or whether it's any art or whether it's any body of work, that they find the essence of what they shot. Because he said, like, when they asked him about deleted scenes or adding to this, would you ever want to have a different cut of the film, or would you ever want to have all this? He goes, why would I ever want to do that? That would minimalize our reputation as artists, or it would change the narrative of who these people were as seen through the lens of our film.
Dude, it's the bottom of the hour. I'm going to read this. Hello, friends of River West Radio. It's spring cleaning time. We need your help gathering items for our spring fundraising campaign. Donations should be no bigger than a shoebox worth no less than $35. Let's turn those special things you no longer need into tax-deductible donations and keep community radio on the air till next spring. Get a kick out of that, my man?
I loved it, Mark. It's so true.
You bet you did.
Contributing to radio, community radio, public radio is really important to me. This sounds like I'm blurbing something that you hear on an NPR station or on a community radio station, but I'm not. Down here in Kansas City, we have KKFI, which is sort of like the Kansas City version of WMSC in Milwaukee. And
man, that's a killer station.
I just realized today, I was like, man, I got to start contributing to this station because I get so much out of it. I just get so much culture, so much music, so much intake. It adds to my life. And I feel like River West Radio, WMSC, whatever your community-powered radio stations that you choose to listen to are, I feel it is important to contribute to that. However much or however little. Being a sustaining member, obviously, is what they're always going for. But I feel like helping in any way that you can is super cool. I just think that that's the essence of where we should be as a people, as a society, as a culture, as a human race. And I think that doing that for something that adds to your life is just super cool. I just think that really is. It's important to me. So I just wanted to say that. River West Radio gives us our voice on this station, on this show for sure. So that's, yeah.
Excellent. Hey, you know what I did is I started reading William Goldman's Adventures in the Screen Trade again because I had started it a lifetime ago, and I read up until the screenplay for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and I'm thinking, man, just start the book over again, and I will read it front to back, and what a beautiful adventure that is, William Goldman's Adventure in the Screen Trade. It's one of the seminal books on contemporary modern day screenwriting and Hollywood. So it just it's not a how-to manual. It's just it's kind of like Joe Esterhazy's Hollywood Animal, but it's a take on the landscape of Hollywood, the landscape of the motion picture business, and obviously highlighting the screenwriting trade. So just a wonderful book to begin again and really sink into.
What was he involved with?
What was William Goldman involved? Well, he was first of all, he was involved with Butch Cassidy, the screenwriter for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, dude. That's what he was. And then I'm trying to, because I've got that short-term, not good memory, but the Marathon Man, right?
Oh yeah,
Olivier
sure.
And Dustin Hoffman, and he's got a very known one, a film that I haven't seen and I know nothing about, and half the world will be aghast. It's called The Princess Bride. One of the great screenplays, if there ever was a great screenplay. I've often pointed, and I've said that on the show many times. I depending on what type of film someone is asking me, like what in terms of what their own personal endeavors, like, oh man, I really want to write this into a film or a treatment or I just want to start writing, and I'm interested in script writing or screenplay writing. I point them towards, in terms of the logistics of getting their ideas on the page, and also the transition of how things from a really detailed screenplay can either survive to the screen if it's written well, and sometimes just how that stuff has to change. Whether it's the writer was the director and realized that, or the film was directed in another person's hand and was translated. Aliens, John Carpenter's The Thing, The Manchurian Candidate, the original Manchurian Candidate from 1962, just one of the most expertly executed, poignant, straightforward examples of screenwriting you can possibly. Seconds, which was made by John Frankenheimer, another expertly crafted screenplay full of ideas. Ideas are the science fiction. It's not the visuals. It's not the special effects. It's not visual gimmicks. It's the belief that we believe what has happened
and therefore that is the special effect. That's also the central special effect in Back to the Future. The fact that they propose that Marty McFly has traveled back in time, the sets are not really that believable. It's not the fact that there's all these other gimmicks. There are special effects in that film, visual effects, computer effects, but it's the fact that Michael J. Fox's central performance is so on the money for a Hollywood film. He is the special effect of the film. He is what executes that screenplay. He and Christopher Lloyd and all the other just great supporting players in that film. The Princess Bride is another example of that Hollywood. We believe in the screen. If Rob Reiner and the producers and the actors and everyone that worked on that film didn't believe in the execution of that film, it would not have worked. That film does not have a ton of sets. It doesn't have a ton of stuff that isolates you into believing that, oh, this must be this time period because that looks like this time period. It's actually a fairly low-budget film, but they make the most of their resources that they have, and it's imbued in the performances, the storytelling, the character development. That's what makes The Princess Bride work. When people, and there have been many film critics and scholars and just film goers over the years, it is not an uncommon thing when I talk to film people, even people with really, really high academic, accomplished taste, complicated taste in film, and I will ask them, what is your favorite comedy? Across the board, people of varying tastes, The Princess Bride comes up more than any other film, without a doubt.
Hey, it's not. Is it a fantasy film or what is it, man?
It's a comedy first and foremost. It's. I would say it's a medieval fantasy in the fact that it exists in a sort of hodgepodgey idea of kingdoms where the names have been replaced by made up names for kingdoms. It could be anywhere in the Middle Ages, but it is mostly a means of telling a comedic and adventure. It's an adventure more than it's a fantasy, and it's a great adventure. It's brilliant filmmaking, and it's excruciatingly funny, and it's all hinged on the performances, the dexterity, the confidence, the insecurities, the hopes, the dreams, the failures, the disappointments, the shame in certain moments. Christopher Guest is in it. He's unbelievable. Chris Sarandon, Carrie Elways, Robin Wright before she was Robin Wright Penn, Andre the Giant in one of the most underrated comic performances, period. Wallace Shawn in probably his best performance, and is definitely his most memorable performance, and that's saying a lot. Wallace Shawn is one of the great actors, period. And he is so good in The Princess Bride. It is just, and the fact is that The Princess Bride is gotten taken for granted because it's one of those institutional films where we take for granted that it's there. Mm-hmm. We've seen it. A lot of people grew up with it or saw it, and they rewatched it, and they rewatched it, and you sort of forget how good it is because after a while you don't even remember because it's not startling. It's not new. It's not something that's contemporary anymore. It was made in 1987, but it's not something of the recent memory. So it doesn't stand out in this large megaplex of new cinema. It's not underrated, but it's oftentimes not cited enough as one of the great comedic films. In terms of like the lists of the greatest films ever made, I wouldn't put it anywhere in the top 100, but in terms of films that have really had an effect on people, where they've really lodged into people's hearts and really changed the way that people look at movies from a very straightforward point of view, because it's not an avant-garde work of art, mm-hmm. and it's not a complex film in the sense of a film that will change your sensibilities about the way you look at reality or the way that we look at each other as human beings. But it is a startlingly effective film, considering that it's a family film too. I don't think there's a single joke in the film that doesn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a worthwhile film for the acting first and foremost. It's probably Rob Reiner's best film, too, I would say. Yeah.
Well, maybe I should write that down,
Maybe.
put that down, and check it out just to get
I,
that, because it's part of the Zav, part of the collective canon. So yes.
Yeah, it's one of those mainstream films that I'd be curious. I'd be curious. I'd be curious to hear your take on it, because it's a film that most people see in their childhood, and it's a film that a lot of people saw in the 80s and the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So to watch it through the prism of contemporary culture without growing up with that sentimentality around it, I'd be really curious to hear your observations about both, from a visual point of view, the filmmaking, and what you think of the execution of the film itself. Because it's one of those films that people talk like when they were a kid, they really love it, and they still love it as an adult. There's few films that I think work on that level where, at least for serious film watching people, where what absolutely works about the film when you're a child or when you're younger or when you first saw it still is absolutely the essence of what makes it work now. You talk to people like, oh, Battery's not included. I loved that movie as a kid. E.T., I loved that movie as a kid. Jurassic Park. Stuff that these are good films. These are accomplished works of Hollywood, but I wouldn't scrutinize. I wouldn't look closer at the elements of why do these films work. It's pretty obvious why those films work. There's nothing too subterranean going on in those movies, as much as they are good films.
Well, that answers the question of what William Goldman wrote.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I've seen that film numerous times, and I hadn't associated his name with that, but absolutely. I believe The Princess Bride is based on a book before it, and I've never read that book, so I couldn't tell you how much of it is due to that book being just a good source material. But I imagine it's a fair amount. But yeah, man, that is a good Hollywood film right there. Also, I just want to throw this out real quick. I finally got caught up on a handful of documentaries from the early 2010s that I've been meaning to watch, and I finally just was like, I'm going to watch these films. They were extremely well reviewed, and let's see if they hold up, or let's see if they work. So I watched Project Nim, which is from 2011, which is about a chimpanzee who became rather famous in the early 70s before Coco. Probably the first famous chimp, like pop culture famous chimp. This chimp was on the cover of Newsweek, and the psychological experiments that were done on him were meant to look at whether nature and nurture could be translated to chimpanzees and to monkeys. If the idea of putting enough time and effort into teaching language to a chimpanzee, if it could start to associate and learn the way that a human being did, and start to, freely associate creativity and its own thoughts rather than just associating object with a sign thing with it. If it could start to form sentences on its own. So for years, this chimp traveled through the hands of numerous families and numerous people that worked with them, one-on-one groups of people that worked one-on-one with them. So it's an extremely sentimental, extremely personal film, because they interview these people that lived with him, that loved him like a family member. And it also looks at how dangerous chimpanzees really are, because it's a film that has a precise length. It's about 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is just a perfect amount of running time to go into the more specific into more specifics about what it was like to live with a chimp as it progressed in age and became both more human and more wild, as its embedded genetic nature started to take more and more hold, and there were more and more instances of this chimp who was in many ways their brother or their sister or their son become more and more like a chimp and less like this object or this sort of pseudo person. So it's a very complex, very interesting film, very well directed, if maybe lacking some risks, some art, and some filmmaking, I guess, that goes beyond the means of just making a documentary film that maybe has some complex ideas espoused by the people speaking the ideas or the people being interviewed, if maybe it becomes apparent that the filmmakers themselves don't really have any complex ideas or complex theories themselves. They're unassigned, which, as we've stated earlier about documentary films, that can be a very useful tactic in just showing things objectively, or that can be a hindrance when you have something that maybe requires a point of view, a perspective, and even a bias.
I just want to throw this in real quick, is that we have an adjunct listener that did read the Princess Bride source, the novel, I assume, and said it was very, very good. So we want to thank you guys way east of us for contributing, giving us a meaningful contribution on that. So thank you guys way out east there.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's I've always wondered about that book. I've always wanted to read it, but I never quite did. So I really appreciate that. That's just super cool.
It's too cool.
It is cool. Thank you. I finally also got to watch West of Memphis, which is I had previously seen Paradise Lost, all three of them. Paradise Lost 1, 2, and 3 were three documentaries made by HBO Documentary Films, the ultimate, in my opinion, of contemporary documentaries made in the last 18 years, the only studio that can compete with the output that HBO Films has made available, not necessarily that they've produced, but that they've acquired and distributed through their means, is Docurama Films, which was too short-lived. The films that Docurama put out were just so exquisite. I'm sorry, I had to put that out there for a second. I was reminded. But HBO Films was on fire in the 90s. They were, because there was this, they had the means to give money to filmmakers that would have otherwise not been able to go the long distance to really follow through in terms of the years required to sometimes do the journalistic work, stay with their subjects, go where their subject went, track down as many leads, as many people involved in a story as possible. So HBO Films in the 90s really did some super cool stuff. In fact, they financed Rebecca Miller to on again, off again make short films about her father, Arthur Miller, all of which were recently compiled into a single 2-hour film called Arthur Miller Writer, which HBO Films just released.
Dude, we got to see that.
Absolutely, Mark. And I just, I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to watch it. I know you're going to be excited to watch it.
Damn right.
HBO Films just released a documentary about Andrei the Giant, which I'm going to watch.
How about Andre Gregory? Dude said Andre the Giant. But anyway,
and they just released a documentary on the anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination called King in the Wild, King in the Wilderness, which is supposed to be just, it got overlooked because people get so used to the HBO making these exquisite films utilizing never before seen shot footage of the subjects that they just don't, they get mentioned for a day or so, and then they're like, oh yeah, HBO made this great, amazing, groundbreaking documentary. Yeah, what else is new? So I haven't had time to watch that either. But going back to Paradise Lost, they're about what's referred to as the West Memphis Three, which were three kids that were accused of doing some horrible, heinous, awful crimes of murdering and doing other things to these three 8-year-old boys that were found murdered in Arkansas. And they were quickly tried and sentenced to life in prison. One of them was sentenced to be executed, and he actually finally got an appeal to stay his execution. And it became very obvious, even from a very skeptical and from a very cautious point of view, that these guys did not do this. it just is, and I'm not into conspiracies. I'm not into questioning all authority at all costs. But I had heard, not just from these films, but I had looked at a number of, and not associated with the Free the West Memphis 3, but it was just very obvious that this case had been rushed. They had come to early conclusions, and they just didn't have their guys. They didn't have their guy or their guys or their women or their woman or their women's, whatever. And the first film, Paradise Lost, when it came out in 1996, unleashed a huge torrent of fury about the injustice of these boys being locked up. Unfortunately, the other two films, which were extremely well made, were mainly the focus of pointing the guilt at one of the fathers of the boys, which has since, upon even further re-examination, was looked at as a huge misstep. Wildly erroneous, incredibly irresponsible journalism on their part. But ultimately, West of Memphis, the film from 2011, takes into consideration those three films that had previously been made and all further evidence, and came to the conclusion that no, it wasn't in fact this father, Mark. It was this other father of one of the three boys, Terry. And it just very carefully, cautiously, which is what the other films were not, careful or cautious, it carefully and cautiously looks at the evidence, and it goes further than those films did, and it leaves a stark, stinging mark. I would actually call the film more journalism than documentary filmmaking. It's a unforgettable, really well-made film. Again, if lacking a little bit of art, if lacking a little bit of original presence, but very good. It deserves its reputation. Very, very, very good, memorable, worthwhile documentary filmmaking there. Like 15 years in the making, I believe. So super cool stuff on that end.
Excellent, Gabe.
Yep.
Yeah, that has to be checked out as well. What I think what I'm going to do in different states, I'm going to bring some notes. I remember your incredible notebook that you used to have, and I think what I'm going to do from now on is kind of start to prepare some notes a little bit and have some more precise incisions into our topics for sure, man. Because I always kind of like the way that you have facts on hand. But I think your mind also, everyone's mind is different, and the neural connections obviously are varied, and you have this very precise connection to all of the elements that you experience. You remain precisely connected to them, and then you share it on this radio show. Would you find that to be a correlative truth? You just agree.
Mark, I appreciate what you're saying, because that's what I strive for.
Yeah, well, you hit it on the mark, so you did good, my friend.
Yeah, if I can share that with other people and get them enthused about films the way that I feel enthused, I feel like that's what it's about now. It's not just about my enthusiasm for movies and the way that, and like, oh, I watched another movie that I loved. Oh, I watched another great film. I'll go back to smoking weed and doing drugs if that's all I'm living for. You know, if it's just about me and my enjoyment and my time and what I want to do when I want to do it, it means nothing. But when I can share that, when I feel like, oh man, potentially this could open up someone else's eyes to this film that they've never heard of, or this could maybe, this could give someone else some entertainment, or this can lead, that I can share this with people that in many cases I'm never going to meet, people that I'm never going to talk to. That's just super cool, man. And discussing this stuff with you, I mean, Mark, there is no better audio. There is no better film friend that I've ever had, and I've had a lot of good film friends. But man, your mind has that precision to it too. I know you said that some of the memory gates are kind of collapsing at times,
right?
But the way you look at stuff is just You would be someone that I would be afraid to edit my material, and I mean that in the best possible sense, because you cut through pretension like no one I've ever met. Pointlessness and pretension.
I don't know what to say.
So that's cool stuff,
you,
man.
Dude.
My
man, here, I will say, first of all, obviously the subconscious loves all the accolades, so thank you, because that's like having a banana, a carrot, apple, and orange all at once. So thanks, my man.
Absolutely.
I will
do
say
have to
this.
say
When they
real
talk
quick-
about, the greatest films of all time, there is no such thing because that's all an abstract.
Absolutely.
But I would say, I would submit that if, what I would probably consider to be one of the greatest cinematic achievements of all time is Andrei Rublev, man. I think that would really, really be there, man, as how that, in those crazy, dumb lists of greatest films of all time and all of that stuff. Well, why is not Andrei Rublev like right there? So that's insanity. That's insane. And I got a man out of control trying to throw something in, which will be immediately disallowed. Why Andrei Rublev is not on that at high standing just shows the inadequacy, the moronic in that. When they put, what is it, the Searchers up
number
there,
6.
it's like,
it's
what?
always number 6. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insanity.
Thank you.
The Searchers compared to Andrei Rublev would be the epitome of insanity.
Thank you. And I've talked about this with a lot of people over the years, you included, Mark. The overrating of John Ford, the overesteemment towards the sort of the restrained poetry of a lot of the films that came out of what's referred to as the golden age of Hollywood from 1933, 34 until about 1946. Now, I have stated loudly on this show previously that overall is my favorite period for films because there's just, in terms of like when I can count, like, oh man, that film and that film and that film and that film and oh, you've got Ben Hecht writing these screenplays and oh, you've got Kirk Douglas in these movies and the birth of American independent film, especially in like boxing pictures, in film noirs, small what would have then been called B pictures, films like Kansas City Confidential. Movies by Fritz Lang and other filmmakers. There's a potency to when you look at it from the lens of the time period when these films were made, the history of it, the innovation of it,
yes,
the cultural anthropology of it. But in terms of comparing it to the totality of film, when you look at like the experimental stuff that the Russians were putting out in the 60s,
dude, you're going to find some potency in what I'm about to say. We've got seconds left. Well, let's talk about Tarkovsky, let's talk about Vertov, let's talk about Eisenstein next week.
Yes.
Gabe, we got to split, dude. Have a great night, and thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks to our listeners. Great stuff. We'll see you then. Also, you were never really here. If you get a chance to see it, go see it.
Okay,
right,
dude.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, with 10 seconds left, man, I think I'm going to be falling asleep to CBS Radio Mystery Theater tonight, man, and that is just pretty cool to fall asleep to. We will be on at the same time next week on WXR WLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.